Good evening and welcome to Elections 2020 Update. I'm your host, Romel Roopnarine, and joining me on tonight's program is PVPC GECOM Commissioner, Mr. Robeson, Benn. Welcome to the program, Mr. Benn.
Thank you, Romel.
Now, we come to you again in very uncertain times. I'm sure that all of you tuned in here would have been following everything that has been unfolding after March 2 on to this evening. So you're fairly familiar with what has been happening in our country and where we are as a people. Almost every day we have this drama unfolding. I shouldn't say unexpected, but the lengths that the APNU AFC would go and those that they have control of, it never ceases to surprise persons. But tonight, what we're going to do, we all know what happened today, but we're going to start off from yesterday. Yesterday was a very dramatic day as well. We saw that the GECOM team, they flew in, they were prepared, they were ready to start this recounting process. All the opposition political parties, they had their persons on the ground. Then we saw some of the containers moving in the compound. So can you take us from there, Mr. Benn, as to you were obviously integrally involved in this process. Bring us up to scratch as to how that played out yesterday.
Well, basically, I would say there was an anticipation following a meeting on Sunday that we would have been able to start operations for the recount yesterday, Monday. There was intended to do a walkthrough at 9:30 a.m. yesterday, which did occur. I didn't know that there was a seeming reluctance to have commissioners at that walkthrough from the COA himself of GECOM. But I did go to the convention center, which was the venue chosen, to have a look at what the arrangements were being put in place. The previous day's discussion on Sunday had suggested that I had proposed that we have 10 counting tables. The APNU AFC commissioners said we should only have one. I pointed out that we'd never be finished for a number of weeks if we have only one table. And it was decided that it was proposed from the team that we should have 5, and we'll see when they walk through what would be the best arrangement in terms of numbers of tables and the efficiency with which those tables will work. That as it may, when the walkthrough was held, it was decided that there will be operations in the rotunda and on the two sides, leading to 4 counting tables itself. There was an anticipation that by 1 o'clock latest, we would have been able to start the count with the supervision of the GECOM mission. In the meantime, there evolved a discussion at the GECOM with respect to finding supposed legal and other coverages or making provision for anticipated legal challenges in respect of the use of the GECOM supervisory team. And they were quite willing to make sure that there was sufficient separation between the GECOM mission and the legal responsibilities of the Secretariat and the GECOM commissioners, the commission itself. In any event, it was clear that as the day unfolded that there was delays in bringing the containers to the convention center. In fact, I think the containers only started coming around 4 or after 4:30. In fact, they should have been pre-positioned. I was in the compound at GECOM during the day, and I was not sure but suspicious as to why the containers were not leaving. But I did hear from the Madam Chair, Ms. Claudette Singh, that there would be a start of counting at 4 o'clock. After she said she didn't know what was going on, I said, well, you need to be activists in the process and get it moving. I went to the convention center about 4:20, and it was obvious to me that things were not being pushed along. We were then told that we will have the place fumigated, and that this was something required by the convention center people or whoever, or the Ministry of Health. And they said they will fumigate the place, that the fumigators will come at 5 o'clock. They did not come until 5:34, and then proceeded to use the chemicals which are used to kill mosquitoes and flies and other things. So it was not a fumigation in respect of the supposed coronavirus sanitation, which is what was really being talked about. In any event, I would say that the convention center, when we did the walk on 9:30, was very clean and was being extra clean by the staff on site, supervised by their manager.
And was not used for a while.
And was not used for a while, from any signs that I saw. Then, somewhere around 6:30 or so, when the fumigation ended, Ms. Miles, who's the deputy CEO, came and said to me in the building whether I was on container watch, and I said, I don't understand what you're saying to me. I don't appreciate the way you're expressing it in any event, and we're supposed to have, the process go forward this evening. She said, no, the place has been fumigated, and it has to be closed for the night, and we will see, operations will be done tomorrow. I was very surprised at that, having waited there for a long time. And in fact, there were persons from the stakeholder groups who were waiting in the yard for 4 or 5 hours waiting for the process to start. They're not only stakeholder groups, but observers, local, international observers around there waiting all those hours for it to start. And then to be told we're closing up the place and tomorrow we'll do the thing in an offhand way with that kind of dispatch. So I went outside to talk to advise the stakeholders that they don't intend to do any counting that evening. The fumigation went on. I think there were some laughable pictures and videos as to the fumigation process, the material blowing about. And then thereafter we noticed that a large group of policemen had come into the compound and had lined themselves between where the boxes were stored and where the persons were, the observers and the stakeholder representatives. The police were telling people that everyone has to exit the compound. I grew very concerned at that, and I said that the arrangement was, from the previous evening's discussion at GECOM, was that a representative from each stakeholder group should be with the containers 24/7, meaning 24 hours, 7 days a week. The police were not paying any attention to that, so I decided to walk over to where the containers were and to wait there while I tried to call and resolve the problem. I called the Madam Chair, and there was some confusion from her as to what really should occur, because she was saying she didn't have any jurisdiction over the convention center. And I said, once we have acquired the center for this operation, it is a GECOM operational center. And everything that is being done there is being done on the behalf of GECOM. We were responsible. So the police couldn't determine who could come and go or anything without the advice of the commission, the commissioners themselves. So the police went about their way and forced the people who were in the compound out of it. I stood up on the ramp at the back of the center to seeing that go on, and then they came over to me, one officer, then 2 officers, and said I had to leave town. I said, I'm a commissioner. I am a commissioner. They were here because of decisions I sat in the commission with in respect of their presence there and the security arrangement. and I could not be moved out of the compound again because I was previously prevented. And Cecil Conrad himself, a fellow commissioner, was forced out of the Ashwin's building.
Exactly.
So I was insistent that I wasn't going anywhere. In any event, to make matters fairly short, they came, 3 heavily clothed policemen came. Two were heavily clothed with their gear, and after a long toing and froing about leaving and not leaving, I said I wasn't leaving, I was a commissioner. I kept calling people to get this matter resolved. They started to bump me off the ramp, and I hopped off a couple times to escape them, to avoid them, and then they physically started grabbing me from the back of my pants and forcing me, lifting and forcing me out. I kind of held on to the rails and the supports to the rails, and eventually they couldn't move me when I got on the ground, and I kept calling the leader of the opposition. He said that he had spoken with Ambassador Larocque, who I also tried to make contact with to say this is happening, and that this was very suspicious, that they wanted no one around the containers, and were saying that this is a high security area, no one must be there, in contravention of the oral understandings of stakeholder presence at the containers, in my view, wherever they are. Eventually, the word came through. Mr. Jagdil, I think, did make contact with Mr. Larocque, did make contact with Ms. Motley too, I think, and they stopped trying to get me out. I was lying in the ground by then, and they had pulled me, which created an injury to my shoulder and my elbow. I had to go to the Woodlands last night to get some attention. I have some medication. But beyond that personal distress, the greater problem is, in my view, the continuing facilitation by GECOM staffers, persons at high levels in the secretariat, because the GECOM person, logistical man in the ground, came and told me, I have to get out. And I warned him, and I told him, there's no, by no means I'm leaving, and I'm warning you to remember that I'm a commissioner. In my view, there was an attempt. The critical thing was to get the Region 4 COM started. And the high-level CARICOM team which came insisted that they also wanted to count those Region 4 ballots first. The positioning of the cantor, which had some of the ballots, was being questioned by our people in the ground, because it was figured that they were putting other containers in front of them to prevent access to them, so they will come and say, oh, we will do Region 1 or 2 or 3 for us, and leave that Region 4 for much later. I had to point out, or I have to point out now too, that the CARICOM mission came with the intended stated purpose of doing the Region 4. This was later extended to all 10 regions, but that there was an anticipation that they would finish by Wednesday, which is tomorrow, and that there was no way that this large amount of counting for the entire country would occur in a couple of days, particularly if you only use one counting station. Anyway, I went to the hospital, got some treatment, and anticipated again for today that we will have the counting process started. We were called already to a meeting at GECOM, and we were told that there was a document which we had to sign, which they started some discussion, or had to have published, gazetted, that this CARICOM team required the modalities and so on, whatever, gazetted, to go around the issues of challenges later on when we would have done certain things with the CARICOM team. We had a meeting, it was quite heated. I objected to many things. One of our commissioners went off with them to have this document prepared for gazetting. difficulty we have in hearing later this afternoon what they were discussing was that I heard them say that they were going to, that they had a meeting and the meeting was held with the Attorney General. In fact, this is a version of the document here that was intended to be gazetted. I don't know if your viewers can see it, but it will be made public. This is to give coverage to the CARICOM process. But there was a lot of time wasted, but as I said, they held a meeting at the AG's chambers with the Chief Parliamentary Counsel and some others, persons and others on both sides supposedly. But they said it was chaired by the Attorney General. I pointed out that Guyana has no Attorney General at this time. It has no minister. That the situation in which we are in is that we have a president who remains on a caretaker basis until a new president is sworn in, which could mean another person or the renewed swearing in of a president of the same one. So there was that difficulty. So a lot of time was wasted again with this. This document had to come out. It didn't come out until this afternoon. And another day was wasted, and I kept saying so this afternoon. And then we heard that the CARICOM mission was coming to meet with us. There were whisperings that there was an attempt being made to go to the courts to get an injunction to stop this whole CARICOM thing, and that is what materialized. There are large injunction papers which the court granted in respect of these issues to stop the CARICOM mission. And in fact, too, there is the problem that tomorrow is Wednesday. There's this talk about the coronavirus. The airports have been shut down rather quickly, and there was a risk that no one would be able to fly out of the country tomorrow. And Ambassador Larocque came and in the event said that given the issues with the injunction and of course the timing and other times, that the CARICOM mission was withdrawing from Guyana. A tragic circumstance given the fact of all that has gone on before and the attention which we have on our country at this time in what should otherwise be a simple process in respect of our elections. My biggest difficulty, and I had premonitions of this problem before, when I always said that the lack of diversity at the upper levels of the Guyana Elections Commission was a matter for great worry. That the clannishness of particular groups when they get together to relate to each other and could be influenced by persons outside was a problem, that you needed better balance. I took the matter of Mr. Vishnu Prasad's removal from the commission to the Ethnic Relations Commission, and we got no resolution or help in that manner. The person who was most qualified otherwise to carry the elections through a clear, free, and transparent process that we have in Guyana at this time. I am of the firm belief that the Chief Elections Officer, the DCO, Ms. Myers, and others are complicit in what has occurred here. We have a situation where the chairperson said this evening to the CARICOM mission that she was going to go to GECOM's lawyers in relation to this injunction, which has to be returned on Friday. The surprising thing is that when the Chief Justice ruled on the matter which injuncts the chairperson and ourselves on pain of going to jail, that we had to do the recount, the Chief Justice came up on Sunday at Diamond in her day clothes, Sunday clothes, whatever, and heard the matter, and they were all the lawyers and everybody there. And Mr. Boston was there for us, for me. I didn't know nothing of his hiring. I just see he appears in court, and I've always objected to the hiring of person without me or being consulted. And amongst his team again were persons who were candidates in the elections for the APNU AFC. So they couldn't be representing me in a matter in which they have interests like that at the court, also to having not consulted with that. So I don't know how we can be paid or how they could be patently representing ourselves having not been consulted and having been on one side of the issue, because they have to be representing a commission that approves of their hiring. But this problem continues at the commission. But as I said, we're in a problem where we have had the withdrawal of an Organization of American States mission from Guyana in respect of these elections, headed by Mr. Bruce Golding, a former Prime Minister of Jamaica. This is not simply CARICOM, the CARICOM mission in itself, which had a few states represented for CARICOM, but the Organization of American States. We've had the issue of the diplomatic representatives from the United Kingdom, Canada, United States of America, the European Union, withdrawing from the process which was being purportedly being declared by Mr. Mingo, the returning officer of Region 4, at the Ashmins building. These things are significant and are an embarrassment to our country. And it has been clear all along when the controversy erupted over in Region 4 and the delays even then at the beginning, was that a great conspiracy is afoot to deny the Guyanese people the free expression of their will at these polls at the 2020 general and regional elections. And further, that this conspiracy, I believe, involves persons in the police force, because there's no way that they could not know after even being told that they couldn't be tumbling commissioners out of facilities under the supervision or ownership of the Guyana Elections Commission. There's no way. I don't even have to mention that I'm a former commissioner of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, and that I was previously a minister of the government of Guyana for 2 terms. So the behavior of them, one policeman senior told me on the road, moving from one barrier manned by policemen to another barrier also manned by policemen. I asked if any of the police could accompany when I was going to collect a document. He told me that I would have to go at my own risk. So the police have been standoffish in this matter, and the police have been pliant and willing to have commissioners removed from the areas of the commission, and also not to have representatives of stakeholder groups there and available to have constant view of operations at these sites around the containers. There could only be one logical, rational conclusion as to what is going on between the police, between operations at GECOM, and wider behavior. The chairperson, I think, has her own difficulties, where I see she's smothered by security. 2 cars with security persons, one in front, one following, men in dark clothes, person with big guns, all kinds of stuff is happening. And I hear that the returning officer for Region 4, Mingo, has been holed up at the Tactical Service Unit. I would like to get some confirmation on that, but that's what I've heard, that he has been holed up there. And in fact, you would have seen that he left the Ashmins building surrounded by 12 or more policemen. It's ridiculous. I don't know that he has anything to fear from any person. And when he made his declaration in the compound of the Guyana Elections Commission a few nights ago, he was again immediately surrounded by about 20 policemen and women, and whisked away when he got to the gate in a GECOM car. So there is indeed a great controversy present. There is fraud being contrived and perpetuated in respect of these elections. There is conspiracy at various levels At GECOM, the commission itself, with members of the secretariat of the commission, at levels in the police force, and at others, persons who are said to be presidential guards or other persons sneaking around, and persons covering their heads and going into the Ashman's building when we were kept out of it recently. I think we have a tragedy that is unfolding with respect to our democratic systems or constitution. And this tragedy started unfolding since we had the no confidence vote. And now I'm remembering, and in fact I was reminded this afternoon that it was since December 2018. As long ago as that. So the reason, the only thing I could ask Guyanese at this present time is to continue to be as civil as possible, to hold their peace, while the principals and the political actors, and even perhaps ourselves at GECOM, will recover our responsibilities or approach to our responsibilities in respect of our statutory duties to which we have sworn for the upholding of Guyana's constitution. I don't think for recent, I can't recall when we would have been so much at risk. I'm not aware that we would have had situations where every mission, every commentator out there, whether they are in high levels in governments overseas, are commenting on our situation and what would result if we don't have a proper election process with credible results and that the will of our people is expressed.
So basically, we wait until Friday to hear that injunction?
Yes, we're waiting until Friday. I guess we can't think. It's a shameful thing, in fact, that we waited until Friday, because I told him the Chief Justice gave up our Sunday to hear the matter. Mm-hmm. And so this thing again of waiting until Friday takes away again a number of days from resolving this issue in the courts or wherever. And they said that this thing was an urgent thing, ex parte, and all of those fancy legal words. But obviously there's no hurry to hear it, this thing, which should be dealt with urgency. There's no real interest in getting it solved. They want to stretch it out and perhaps burn us out, or burn the people in the country out, and have us in a continuing distress where you're not sure whether you travel safely, whether you can open your shop and do your business or your trade, or go and do your welding or block making or whatever you do, or farming, to have a livelihood, continue to feed your family. So we are in deep trouble, and we, I'm sure, would continue to get the approbation of not only the region that we have already, because I don't think the CARICOM mission left here, well, they haven't left yet, by tomorrow, with probably the last flight out, that they have left the commission happy. They were deeply unhappy. It was in their expressions, it was certainly implied by what they said. They said that they have every wish for the future of Guyana, safe, civilized, proper, and that, of course, that we had to think of our country in respect of all of these things. I pointed out that whatever happens to Guyana that is negative arising out of this, which seems to be now a struggle that will be going on for a while, it will affect CARICOM, not simply the lives of the people in our country, the lives, our economy and everything, but that it will also affect CARICOM, the wider region, and it will have international repercussions in view of the fact that we have a large diaspora population in North America and in other places.
Talking about international repercussion, I think today we had probably the strongest statement from the U.S. State Department. We saw that video circulating with the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, stressing that there will be serious consequences for those seeking to benefit from electoral fraud in Guyana. And I'm quoting him here. Serious consequences for those seeking to benefit from electoral fraud in Guyana. Now that is the U.S. Secretary of State. He's been very vocal during this entire process. We have seen several officials, not just in the U.S. government, but various other countries, the ABC countries and so forth. But this here, you're talking about ramifications for Guyana. This obviously would have some amount of impact in Guyana should the U.S. move to, and we don't know, we could only speculate what these serious consequences are at this point in time. But any sanctions in the whole generally tend to hurt, hurt the country.
Yes, well, sanctions, there may be persons who may be named in respect of particular attention in respect of sanctions. As you said, persons who seek to benefit from.
And what he did here, he was very clear that the sanctions based on this here, he narrowed it down to those who are seeking to benefit from electoral fraud. And I think by now, even all the viewers, they would have a pretty good idea of who these individuals are. So it was good that the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, narrowed this down as to who they intend to target in a very serious manner.
Yes. The difficulty though is that even though they may target particular persons, particular actors in what has happened, ultimately the impact of sanctions affect ordinary people. While you might stop somebody from traveling or seize his money or whatever, even jail him if he tries to go out of the country and all of that thing, the effect of it otherwise, and if there's no movement in terms of those actors in bringing the situation back to normal, is that it begins to go to positions which impact on the lives of ordinary people. Those actors who are impacted tend to get more oppressive, more malicious, and put in place things which will not redound to the benefit of people. And so, as I said, we're in grave danger, and people need to come back to their senses in respect of the elections. I recall the 2015 elections, which was still on an elections petition which have not been heard by the courts, because the PPP challenged the results of the elections, PPP Civic, and there are particular boxes which were stuffed. And to prove that those boxes had issues with them, they were supposed to be opened and counted. It was never done. And the elections petition of 2015 has not been heard of as yet by the courts. In any event, after a few days of demonstrations and going to the root of the elections petition, the Ganga Prasad petition, the PPP handed over power peacefully, even though the position was that they had not lost the elections, that there was fraud in those elections. But power was handed over peacefully. The PPPC in Guyana, which ran the country for a number of years, took the position that for the better good of the country and the safety of the citizens, that it will do the right thing on the face of it for the results which were pronounced, that it will go the way of an elections petition and allow for the law to take its course. The law and the constitutional course has not taken its course in that case, but here we have a situation where it is clear, in my view, that the PPP has a large unassailable lead as a result of these elections. Why there hasn't been a concession from the other side? And I'm putting on my own political hat here. There ought to have been a concession because they know who won the elections. Not only the operatives of the political parties, the APNU, AFC, and the other smaller parties know what the result is. The security and military and police architecture know what the results are. They collect the results from every polling station by means of the police officers who are at those polling stations.
Yes, that's true.
And other security. They know what the results are. So, again, this is a travesty. They talk about the return of electoral fraud to Guyana, and all of those things in Trinidad and other newspapers. We're getting negative comments from the New York Times. We're getting people chucked around, and sadly, of course, we have had people shot and one dead so far. And one hopes that this will not continue and we will not have that problem continuing. But, of course, if people are attacked, they have to defend themselves. And we have to appeal to the senior persons and the leaders in the society, otherwise in the community, to influence people to be peaceful while this is worked out. But one should not expect that people don't have a right to protest under these circumstances, and that people are distressed and anxious at this moment with what is going on.
One could only imagine what would have been the case had it been the other way around. And we see the APNU, AFC, we see they have put their, some of their supporters out there trying to intimidate. We saw the media coming under attack. We saw observers, both local and international, receiving threats. We saw even as one of the officials from one of the smaller parties was doing an interview, one of the APNU AFC officials, or I have to say thugs, hurled some object at the guy on live. He was streaming live on Facebook, and we've seen all of this. And at the same time, the APNU AFC is coming out with a straight face saying that they have been successful in getting their supporters to behave orderly, and quite the opposite to that. But the People's Progressive Party also issued a statement this evening, and I'll just read a small excerpt from it. The filing of an injunction today to block the agreed recount exposes the duplicity of President David Granger, those around him, and those within the APNU AFC coalition. It was Mr. Granger who called the CARICOM chair, Barbados Prime Minister
Exactly so.
to say he did not want to be sworn in on the basis of disputed election results, and requested a high-level CARICOM team to supervise a recount of the ballots. Now, bearing in mind that it was Mr. Granger, you mentioned everything that has happened from then to now, and just this evening we found out that the individual who filed the injunction, let me get her name, Yulita Moore, she was on the candidate list for the APNU AFC for the local government elections, and if I've also heard that she's one of the regional reps on their list for these elections as well. So this person, here you have Mr. Granger calling the CARICOM officials in to do the recount, and then he has one of his members to go and file this injunction against it.
Yes.
Duplicity, how this further damages the image of this country, because you're not just dealing on the local level, you're dealing with at a regional level now. And as you mentioned, these CARICOM officials seem pretty upset today. They would have been following what's going on.
Yes, they are completely aware of what's going on. It's out in the regional media and in the international media. And the question, if you go through at each stage of the machinations, the changes, the delays, what has happened, persons who said they were sick and were not sick, in respect of the returning officer from Region 4, Mr. Ming, and all those things, one clearly sees that this thing is centrally directed. And it's not a plot, in my view, that has been hijacked by some rogue elements in the AP and UAFC with other former military and police operatives. But this is centrally directed. This is centrally directed. There are the images that go there of threats. I'm threatened, persons are threatened all over the place with respect to the positions they take. And I don't think at the end of this day, none of us could absolve ourselves from what is happening here. The question is which side we stand on, whether we stand on the side of the Guyanese people and the Constitution of Guyana, and whether we will do the right thing to rescue our country from the abyss into which it is has rapidly fallen into.
And you mentioned something very important, because we have noticed that the APNU AFC is busy trying to make this an ethnicity issue, a race issue in our country, and they have been trying to divide persons along those lines. If you listen to the statements, the targeted statements by some of these APNU AFC persons, they're trying to play on persons' ethnic sensitivities, especially with what has happened to date. And that is wrong because, as you quite rightly said, this is a fight for Guyana. This is a fight for Guyana, and what has been heartening to see is that you have so many people from all divide, all backgrounds, so forth. A lot of young people also. Some of those from all the other parties that are there foot to foot watching these containers and putting up a fight to the attempts to hijack this election. They've all done this with a unified voice. So that is also a dangerous element. And I saw one of the things I was really upset about today is I saw someone shared an image of you in a Facebook group, and you came under some nasty racist attacks, and I was very blunt. I had to say what I had to say, and then I removed myself from that group in, right? And I can't, in this day and age, we have people who you would consider smart that are not only ignoring the fact that this blatant theft and the suppression of persons' right to elect a government of their choice, but to even fall for this race baiting trap. I think it's very unfortunate and very dangerous.
Well, as they say, there's a famous quote by someone that the resort to racism is the resort of scoundrels. And what we are dealing with here and now in Guyana is a resort of scoundrels to use racial invective and to divide our people, and in so doing to illegitimately capture the governance of the people of Guyana again. These are scoundrels. These are wicked persons. And we know that once we keep our friendships or relationships going properly together and avoid some of that social media space where these things go on, that our people will hang together in spite of our difficulties. The wonderful thing about Guyana is that we have the ability to appreciate and experience multiple cultures, multiple religions, multiple ethnic experiences, which makes for us being a more experienced and aware people in a multicultural society. If we lose this, we will lose everything. There will always be persons who will attempt to exploit racial insecurity for political and other purposes. They have no other game. It's the last and the worst resort. And we have, as Guyanese, people of all races, cultures, religions, to resist a descent into attacking each other based on how we look, or ethnicity, or race, or whatever, religion, all those other things. Because all those things will be thrown into the mix. Once we start with the race, then we'll degenerate into the religion, whether what the religion you are, or which branch of a religious grouping you are. There'll be a mad descent. There'll be a descent into madness in the country. And we have to avoid this for the sake of our young people. And as I always say, for the sake of our country, our young people, and I said we have to hand over to our young people a better life than we ourselves have had. We have inherited from our parents a better life than they themselves have had. And we cannot squander the opportunity and the history and the culture that they have given on to us in this wonderful little country. We have the responsibility as older people, and I have to say I'm much older than you. I have that responsibility to hand over to my children, to the future generation, as a professional and as a Guyanese, a better life for them than I have had myself, for each and every one of them, of whatever race, religion, culture, or social grouping. And so I reject anything that they say in relation to my race or my relationships with other races or anything. I reject those out of hand.
Well, the other thing here is that, and what you have gotten to the point with is that when the actions that have been taken, the positions that have been taken so far, it is for all of Guyana. It's not just for those who support the People's Progressive Party Civic. We have a large amount of Guyanese that, and persons we saw last night. Persons just randomly turn up at the international, the convention center to, on their own, help watch over the ballot boxes.
Yes, and I want to thank and applaud those persons who came out to help watch the ballot boxes and engage to reject the actions of the police force at the convention center.
Yeah, these were persons, again, from all backgrounds, but they had one, they had one concern, and that was this stealing, this blatant stealing of the election, or attempt to steal the election in front of their eyes. And what the APNU, the actions of the APNU AFC and those that they have inside GECOM, what it was done is backfired on them, the efforts to sow division. It is actually unifying this nation against them, because people are seeing now what has happened. I mean, they did have celebration, I think twice or three times victory celebration, but now persons are seeing when they were put up there to have the recount now. They made all manner of excuses, but now they had the opportunity to do the recounts, and that they could not do. I think a large portion of their own supporters, and yesterday I spoke to one individual who happened to be a member, a public service employee as well, and he said, well, that was the last straw. He was convinced, and this is an APNU AFC supporter, he was convinced then that for sure that they had lost the elections, and he was very upset with what they were doing. So that is another thing. It is the actions taken is for all Guyanese, this fight here.
Well, one would have to take note that the actions being taken, even this injunction being taken in the courts, is irrational. The APNU AFC campaigned on the platform which they said was multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious, honesty and sincerity and all of that. So if they are those things, why would you take steps to prevent the counting of ballots boxes which has some controversy? You would want to put all the cards on the table and let us count. Yeah. And there are international observers who don't have horses in the race. There are international and local observers who don't have horses in the race. There are stakeholder groupings. They're all, or they're ambassadors and diplomats who would want to see things done fairly and credibly. So what is there to hide? Why is there a desperate attempt to hide and to prevent a going into the boxes? Why is there a desperate attempt to prevent the showing and the displaying of the RO returning officers' copies for Region 4 in respect of the tabulations of the returning officer? Why is there yet no bringing to the fore for continued authentication of the Chief Elections Officer's copies of the statements of poll? Why are these things happening? There could only be one rational answer: that the elections have been lost by one party and they're desperately making attempts by infiltrating and taking over. I have said they have captured GECOM. I said that a long time ago. that they have captured the Guyanese Elections Commission and they have enough influence and persons in there working for them to create a situation to interfere with the tabulation, to interfere with the statements of poll, to interfere with the ballots in the boxes, which I believe was the attempt being made last night, why they wanted us cleared out, including myself from the compound of the conference center in respect of the Region 4 ballots. They don't want anybody around because they want to get into the boxes. And it's a shameless attempt and they should desist from it. It has been robbery in full view, attempted robbery in full view of the public and of the international media and international representatives and observers. What more do they want to do to smear themselves with whatever kind of substances that will bring our country into further disgrace? There is no need to be doing anything to prevent a recount of the ballots, boxes, under supervision in the presence of all of those persons who I've spoken to, if you believe that you have won properly. The law provides for a recount. There should be no attempts to refuse persons as counting agents. They have refused about 8 or 10 persons who are counting agents from various parties to give them the right to have a recount done. Aaron Mingo for Region 4 did that. Refused all of them, each and every one almost, as far as I'm aware. So there's no attempt for transparency and integrity in relation to these elections coming out of operatives at GECOM and also outside of GECOM. So we have to identify and publicly name the conspirators seemingly in this matter, and to make sure that when we go to the courts or we have to name in other places, that the right thing will be done in respect of the Guyanese people for these elections. What is being done can never be allowed to stand. It simply cannot be allowed to stand. It smears all of us. We'll return to a period where in the 70s and 80s, the quality of life of Guyanese people went down. The years which we lived went down. The number of kids being born went down. People fled from the country. It took a long time before the country was brought back to some stability and then to being productive and our economy going again. But we've always had this problem in the background, and we have to deal with it in our generation, my generation. I believe we have to be able to deal with it, but it cannot be dealt with on the back of fraudulent elections. It cannot be dealt with on the back of fraudulent elections by machinations and conspiracies at the highest levels in the government and at a critical state institution such as the Guyanese Elections Commission. It cannot be done on that basis. The problem cannot be fixed on the basis of fraudulent elections. It wasn't done before and it will not be done now. Other countries have some of these problems. There's problem, I think, in Malawi. There's problems in South Sudan and all of those places where sanctions are applied to, and the lives of the people are miserable. Miserable as a result of one set of people doing things that are wicked, malicious, fraudulent, without caring for the people that they're supposed to represent and who they've sworn to protect the country and the constitution in their countries. And that is what we have unfolding here. People have sworn to things and are attacking the very constitution they have sworn to. And in so doing, they're attacking the Guyanese people. It doesn't matter who the people voted for. It's a direct attack on the Guyanese people. And it has to be brought to stop. They should concede and bring this farce to an end.
Now, having said that, you have been at the forefront of all this drama. You would have had, obviously, real-time access to all this information, but for the average Guyanese who has been following and they've been trying to keep abreast of what's happening because they have, their lives are at stake here for them. We've had persons messaging me, telling me that they can't sleep, grown men telling me that they're in tears right now about this situation. And this is not only persons who would have voted for the PVP. these are persons who would have openly said that they voted for the APNU AFC as well too. But I mean, they have a realization now what has happened, and persons are very much fearful. They're been wondering what's going on and so forth. But I think it's important to reassure each and every one of you looking that this battle is far from over. What was attempted today, the People's Progressive Party Civic, on behalf of the nation, they will not allow it to just slide like that. They will fight until to the end to ensure that our people, our freedoms, our democracy are preserved. And I think on that note, I'd like to end the program. So I'd invite you to make some closing comments.
Well, just to say that, and this is following on what you've said, that in terms of the struggle which we've seemingly been pushed into, again with respect to free and fair elections and for genuine Guyanese democracy, the sad part is that ordinary people will be affected and are being affected even now. They can't open their shops, they can't do work properly, they can't drive on the road, they can't get to work. All of these things are unfolding and people are losing income. So persons are being hurt. Even the APNU AFC supporters on the road behaving badly, you could see that they're being exploited. That they are being exploited in a cause which they cannot win ultimately. And so while we empathize with them and we empathize with their condition and issues and anxieties, we have to have proper representation according to the will of the people, and our Guyanese people should be able to live safely with each other. What could also precipitate a resolution to this crisis is that more people in the society, some of those who voted and openly supported the AAP and UAFC, coming out and condemning what is going on, because they know what is going on, and they should no longer remain silent under these circumstances. One lady I heard said she was not going to wear her Kasi crown of honor because of the situation and what she knows is unfolding. I think it was a son-in-law or something of the president who said that he knows that the PPPC in any event won the elections, and what is happening is terrible. And what I have to say too is that I'm very grateful that we could see the support coming from all the smaller parties. They have all coalesced around this fight, around this struggle to protect our democracy. And they, of course, are parties. They have lists of their own. They didn't agree or don't agree with PPP, Civic, on everything that position they had. But they've all come over and coalesced around this central and important issue. And we need to get those persons who are up to maliciousness in respect of elections, in respect of fraudulent elections, and all the wicked things that have been going on, to concede and to allow our people and country to live peaceably and with a good future.
Thank you very much. So that was Elections 2020 update for today. My guest on this evening's program was PPPC GECOM Commissioner Mr. Robeson Benn. Thank you very much for joining me on the program.
Thank you, Romel.
I'm your host, Roopnarine. Goodbye.